It was outside. No,
I got it
it's
working.
fine.
Good job.
There you go. Got it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Wednesday morning class that shall not be named. I somehow fixed the YouTube link. I'm not sure exactly how I did it. I did a few things and it worked. That is really impressive.
Yeah.
So we're here with a wonderful group of people in the class, plus everybody online. So welcome to Lou and Ron and Arlene and Genevieve and Michael and Arnold, coming from 4 states, not too shabby, plus all the people watching on YouTube, either live or afterwards. So welcome, everybody. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about the high holidays as we prepare, so specifically Rosh Hashanah. So we're going to look at Rosh Hashanah historically through the text. Some of it is very obvious, and some of it is interesting in a way that you see how the holiday itself is evolved. Now, again, we don't have examples of people celebrating Rosh Hashanah really in the Bible. We have examples of the rules for Rosh Hashanah. So that makes it a little difficult to see the evolution. We don't really see the history of people celebrating till way after the Bible's been finished. But what we'll see is what were the rules from the Torah, and then what are we doing today? So we don't actually break any of the rules from the Torah. However, we have to add a lot of rules and things because the Torah does not give a lot when it comes to this holiday. So first, let's say, may it be your will, God, our eternal and eternal of our ancestors, to grant us a good and sweet year. May we all be inscribed in the book of life for a good year, and may it be sealed for a good year. L'shana tova tikatev, or l'shana tova tikatev v'tachtem. So what we're going to do first is look at the holiday itself, and I'm going to show you some text, although I didn't change the ye's, which I probably should have. Let me do that real quick because it says ye, and that looks kind of weird. For those of you who don't know, ye means you, just in case you didn't know that. All right. All right, so here's the first text from Leviticus. Does everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
I'll make it a little bigger. There we go. So this is the text in Leviticus. And would somebody like to read it?
Sure.
Please, Ron. Thank you.
The biblical sources for this holiday do not refer to it as Rosh Hashanah and do not relate to it as a day of judgment, only as the first of the month of Tishrei.
Yeah, I forgot to take that out and tell you that that's like gives away everything I was going to talk about, so we don't even talk about it now. But read it anyway.
And the Eternal spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall be a solemn rest unto you, a memorial proclaimed with the blast of horns, a holy convocation. You shall do no manner of servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire unto the Eternal.
Perfect. So this is Rosh Hashanah. That's what we're told about it. We're not actually told much more than this in the Bible. What do we know about Rosh Hashanah? Which day is it? It's the first day of the 7th month.
So can you explain that? What doesn't obviously correspond to how we celebrate New Year's, the first day of the year. How does it work in the Jewish calendar?
And that is the question, because it is a strange holiday. One, we know it as the start of the year, but here it says the 7th month.
Mhm.
Secondly, most holidays don't start on the first day of the month because that's if you're blasting the horn, you're gonna start late. So usually, and secondly, the first day of the month, it's dark at night. Most holidays are sometime in the middle of the month when the sun is, the moon is up. Full moon party. So it's unusual. It is basically a holiday where you don't do work, which all the holidays are the same. What is besides the date, what is the only unique aspect of this holiday? You sacrifice.
Of the sounding of the horn.
The sounding of the horn, that's the only unique aspect to it. So if we see, we have the 7th month on the first day of the month. That's unique because it's a unique day. You don't do work, no matter, but obviously for all holidays, you bring offering, which of course is for all holidays. The only unique thing is blasting of the horns. Tried to change that color. We try it again. There we go. Blasting of the horns. So for Rosh Hashanah, we don't even call it Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't say it's Rosh Hashanah because Rosh Hashanah means the head of the new year. So we know there's been a lot of evolution for this holiday because there's very little in terms of what's given about it. So what do we talk about then? First of all, Lou had a great question. It's the first day of the 7th month. How can that be true when we know Rosh Hashanah is the new year? So Rosh Hashanah, think of God creates the world in 6 days. God rests on the 7th day. Rosh Hashanah is day 8. So it is the creation of the world. However, the calendar is not a calendar that is used for us because for us, on our calendar, we have one new year. It's January 1st. But on the Jewish calendar, it's actually 2, 3, or 4, depending. The new year, birthday of the world, creation of the world is what we're about to celebrate. But if you do the calendar song in Hebrew, the first month is the month where you have Passover, Nisan. So that's considered kind of the actual livable day-to-day calendar for this time period, whereas there's a second new year, which is the birthday of the world, the day of judgment. So there's actually 2 new years on our calendar. First of Nisan, first of Tishrei. And so that's why it says that. So sometime later on it evolved that Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the world. Is it in the Bible that Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the world? No, in fact, the name Rosh Hashanah is not even the Bible. Sukkot is, Yom Kippur sort of is, but it basically is. But Rosh Hashanah, there's no name to the holiday. So it's centuries later, as far as we know, we give a name to it. Because obviously, probably if there had been a name given to it, somebody would have written it down somewhere in the Bible. So the shofar is really the only unique aspect to it. And that's why the shofar is so important. That's why we started blowing it every day of Elul, the month before. That's why we blow it on Rosh Hashanah a lot. That's why we blow it at the end of Yom Kippur, even though there's no rule that says it. Because this is the only biblical, the only Torah law that is unique for this holiday is the shofar. And that is, for us, it's very unique. For our ancestors, it wouldn't have been quite as unique because they were blowing the shofar for a rite. They blow the shofar for the defense of they blow the shofar for the new moon. They blew the shofar probably for military stuff or for important moments or gatherings or so. But for us, through all ages, the shofar, which is no longer in any way needed for anything beyond ceremonial holiday stuff, it's really unique. So actually the shofar blowing is more important to us today than it was back then when they heard the shofar probably routinely. And for us, it's not. It's become the center part. So all these prayers, all of the other things we do, apples and honey, that is evolution. Still is important, but the only biblical edict is really the shofar blowing. And so it's kind of interesting that of all the major holidays, this one and possibly Shavuos have evolved the most because there's the least spoken about them. So let's look at where we read about some of these beliefs we now have. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means they're come later. That's what Judaism is about. It's about the evolution. So let's go. Where is this idea of, let somebody read text 4 where it says from the Babylonian Talmud. Now, Rosh Hashanah, what do you notice in the Babylonian Talmud, which is finished around 500s CE? It's in the, what is the name of the tractate? The name of the tractate is Rosh Hashanah. What does it tell us by the time of the Talmud? What do we know?
That they had named the holiday.
The holiday is already named. Not only is it named, there's a huge tractate just on Rosh Hashanah. So by the time at the very least, the Talmud was completed, but we know earlier because it's also in other places. So we know that Rosh Hashanah is completed before the Talmud is. What does it say here? Lou, you just want to read that sentence where it says Rabbi Eliezer?
Rabbi Eliezer says the universe was created in Tishrei. Rabbi Joshua says the universe was created in Nisan.
All right, so this is the debate we just talked about, the two starts of the year. One rabbi says the universe, they already know the calendar. By this time, probably the calendar, everybody knows it starts in Nisan. Everybody knows the calendar starts. So they're debating, when was the universe created? Is it on the 1st of Nisan? Is that day 8? Or is day 8 of the creation Tishrei 1? Obviously, no, we know there's a debate. Who do we know probably wins this debate? Rabbi Eliezer, because today we call Rosh Hashanah the birthday of the world. So obviously there's a debate. One says it starts Nisan. The other says it's Tishrei. Our winner is Tishrei, because that's what we celebrate. So, but remember, in Judaism, they keep the minority and the majority opinion. So both are kept, but in this case, Tishrei won and has not been reversed. Sometimes you can say at a different period of time, we will go with the minority opinion. That has not happened here. So
Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah and Nisan is Passover?
exactly, except for Nisan, Passover is not the beginning of Tishrei, it's in the middle of the month, whereas Rosh Hashanah, and that's one of the reasons they discussed it, because if Nisan is the beginning of the year, Passover is not the beginning of the creation story, because Passover is not on the 1st of Nisan, whereas Rosh Hashanah is on the 1st of Tishrei. So obviously, if you're day 1, you have to be day 1 of the month. So that's another reason Tishrei won out.
It's always struck me as interesting that the first day of the month, you don't see the moon. And yet Rosh Chodesh, it's like the new moon. It's always struck me as kind of interesting.
It is interesting, and I think it has to do more with mathematics and more practical reasons than anything else. I think that's how the calendar was set, and however it's done, it is just the way it's done. So by the time we get the holidays set to their dates and stuff, and the holidays are in the middle of the month, the calendar's already been set by then. So whatever calendar they're using, we know they're using a lunar calendar in the Torah. That we know. Which lunar calendar they're using is debate. But by the time the Torah is starting to be written, there's already a lunar calendar where the full moon is in the middle of the month. We did not invent that. We didn't invent the original calendar. We used somebody else's. Even the Hebrew calendar we use today, we didn't invent. We stole it from the Babylonians. How do we know we stole it from the Babylonians? 1, the Babylonians were good at math. And 2, there are a couple of the Hebrew months that are named after Babylonian gods. So that's another reason why. So we are using somebody else's lunar calendar. Is it the Egyptians? I'm not versed enough to know. Is it the ancient Babylonians? but we are using a lunar calendar already. So let's read something else now. Does everybody see text 6?
Yes.
All right, text 6 is from the Mishnah, which is the first part of the Talmud. The Mishnah is finished around 220 CE. What do we notice by 220 CE?
Mm.
Named Rosh Hashanah?
It's already named Rosh
Yeah.
Hashanah, so we know for sure
Yeah.
by the
The-
year 200 CE, it's already called Rosh Hashanah because it's
Yeah.
in the Mishnah. Now, if it's in the Talmud, so it's in the Mishnah, so we know for sure by 200-ish BCE,
Yeah.
probably much earlier, it's called Rosh Hashanah.
And what you see here is, if I can use the Hebrew term, it's already Yom Hadin, sort of, and it's kind of interesting because it's as a sheep before a shepherd, and this Tana Tokef is part of it. So they've already determined that it's a day of judgment, and I guess you can extrapolate and say it's a day of introspection or whatever. So
Exactly. So now this idea, exactly, Michael, 100%. You're even getting ahead of me. That's perfect. Day of Judgment is not in the Bible or the Torah. When do we think of it as a day of introspection, of getting forgiveness? That is already by this time. Now, next week, we'll look at Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is basically called Yom Kippur in the Bible, Day of Atonement. So that is already there. So the atonement idea is there. We don't know exactly when Rosh Hashanah became the Day of Judgment, but we know by this point it is. We can see it right here. We use this passage in the in the liturgy for Rosh Hashanah, or the idea of it, that we are passing before God in single file. And then as we read in Psalms, he fashions the hearts, he discerns all of their deeds.
Can you explain that, Rabbi?
Sure. Basically, what we're saying, the Psalms is not talking about Rosh Hashanah. Psalms is talking about how God judges us, or how we are judged. But by putting this passage of Psalms in connection with Rosh Hashanah, it is saying that on Rosh Hashanah we are being judged. It doesn't explicitly say it, but it basically does. So it's now saying that we are discerned, we're judged on Rosh Hashanah. Whereas in Psalms, beforehand, this passage was just about in general, that we're judged by God.
So the term discerns is really judgment.
Yeah, it's to check out. It's to look inside. It's to discern, is to look in and really figure out what's going on. So now we see that the psalm phrase has been connected to Rosh Hashanah, which we know is already named Rosh Hashanah by the year 200. We know it comes at the very beginning of the Mishnah. It's 1-2, so it's at the very beginning of the Mishnah. And so we know that it's also an important aspect of Rosh Hashanah because they're talking about at the beginning. So by the year 200, for sure before, because this had to be, that we are already using this day as the Day of Judgment. Obviously, with the idea that atonement is coming on Yom Kippur, which we'll see in the Torah is 10 days after Rosh Hashanah, just like it is today. So you see how I use these awesome you see the technology? I'm so good at it now. I don't know why we have a technology expert here, because I basically can do all of this.
Exactly. You can fire him.
Yes, we can. And then, of course, we'll be firing me afterwards. So now, of course, by the 12th century, when we have Rambam, who is Moses Maimonides, probably one of the greatest intellects in Jewish history, and he writes his Mishneh Torah, which are Mishneh Torah, depending how you pronounce it, which is his great treatise or great work on the halakha and Jewish law. He writes a lot, but he has two books that are the most important ever written. One is a book on law, one is a book on philosophy, and they're both considered two of the greatest things ever written in Judaism. So let's read a little bit of this. If anybody wants to read it.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Although the sounding of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah is a scriptural decree without rational basis, it nevertheless implies the following: arise, you who are fast asleep, and awaken, you who slumber. Search your deeds, repent, and be mindful of your Creator. Those of you who have lost sight of the truth because you are distracted from it by transitory vanities and have instead consumed your entire year with empty and futile pursuits that will not bring deliverance, look well into yourselves and improve your behavior. Let each of you forsake your evil ways and harmful thoughts.
Okay, so by the 12th century, that's almost 1,000 years ago, Rosh Hashanah is now what we think of it as today. What do we learn from this passage? What is he saying about Rosh Hashanah? Now, the part about the shofar not being rational, I mean, basically it means I blow a shofar. That's not like I'm saving a life. It's not like it's not an essential thing to life. It's not like eating, but it's what it implies. What is Rosh Hashanah talking about now? It's saying,
Be a good person.
Be a good person. And we have a very important piece to it that just makes sure we understand. Let's see. But those who have lost sight of the truth because you're distracted by it by transitory vanities and have instead consumed your entire year. What is now Rosh Hashanah, Ron? Yeah, Ron, please, question.
When you repent, is it for the year before or is it for all the years before?
And that is a great question. And that is exactly what we're learning here, Ron, because you're right. Because when we look, when we looked at the previous sections, it talks about sheep going before God on Rosh Hashanah. However, what Maimonides is saying is we're being judged for what? The last year. So according to Maimonides, the day of judgment, Rosh Hashanah, is for the last year. That's what we're looking at. That's how we look at it today. So we know for the last 900 plus years, we look at Rosh Hashanah as, let's look back at our last year and see the mistakes we made and how we can then be atoned for the last year on Yom Kippur. So we can see the evolution now. Did this idea that it was for the entire year start with Maimonides? No, but by this time it is entrenched in our belief system. So now Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment for last year. So now we can now get to the theologies that are so essential for us on Rosh Hashanah, that we are cleaning our slate every year. That is now what we see Rosh Hashanah has become. It is, for the year, it is the holiday where we do not leave the elephant in the room. Every year, the elephant is taken out of the house. Every year, the piles of sins that have piled on our desk are taken off the desk. And this is what we see here from Maimonides. And it's really important to understand that Rosh Hashanah is now the day of judgment for the last year, and it gives into theology that we're supposed to clear ourselves every year so our sins don't stack up. So that is now really something that we've seen the evolution from a holiday simply of blowing the shofar, to it becoming the new year, to it becoming the day of judgment, to it becoming the day of judgment in which we're judged for our sins over the last year.
I have a question. It's not as good as Ron's. Ron's is a good theoretical question. This is more an engineering thing.
Oh, great,
but-
because this is where my expertise lies.
Yeah, mine too. But in the text, the Raman's text, it says, "Arise ye from your slumber," and again, just like the previous section, that's part of the liturgy before you blow
Exactly.
shofar.
So we
And so my question is, which I never really thought about this, is how much of the Rosh Hashanah liturgy comes from Talmud, or
a
Mishnah?
significant amount of stuff comes from the Talmud, from the Mishnah, from Maimonides, from the Bible. So it's a mix of the service we usually do with all of these other additives. And it's a very unusual service because you do have a lot of additional pieces to it, including Al-Khaid, including Maimonides, including the Talmud. So yeah, there's a significant amount that's been added.
Okay.
And what we see here is, this is number 8. This is from, wait, that's not what I wanted. Is that the Shagnon one? Let's go down a little bit more. It's a long one. Okay. Okay, we will go to Shagnon one. Okay, let's go to Shagnon, who is obviously, many of you have known, one of the many Nobel Prize winning writers that came from the Russian Eastern European genre that eventually moved to Israel. And so obviously very famous if he won the Nobel Prize. So let's read a little bit about what he talks about Rosh Hashanah. Anybody want to read this?
Sure.
Thanks, Ron.
Wrote our master Saadia Gaon. There are 10 reasons why the Creator, be blessed, commanded us to blow the ram's horn on Rosh Hashanah.
Okay, so now we're seeing he's going to tell us, from his opinion, what is the reason we're blowing the ram's horn, because in the Torah it doesn't say, it just says it announces the holiday. All right, let's do number 1. We may not read all the...
The first is because Rosh Hashanah marks the beginning of creation, on which the Holy One, be blessed, created the world and reigned over it.
Okay, that's number 1. Let's read number 2.
The second reason is that since Rosh Hashanah is the first of the 10 days of Tisha B'Av, the ram's horn is blown to announce the beginning, as though to warn, let all who desire to turn in Tisha B'Av turn now, and if you do not, you will have no reason to cry injustice.
Okay, the second one. All right, the third one.
The third reason is to remind us of our stand at the foot of Mount Sinai.
All right, and the fourth one? We're just going to read the first of it because it'll take a long time to read all of it.
The first reason is to remind us of the words of the prophets, which were compared to a ram's horn, as it is said. Do you want me to keep reading that?
Yeah, read that one part.
Then whoever heareth the sound of the horn and taketh not warning, it is the sword come and take him away. His blood shall be upon his own head.
All right, and we'll do the fifth one and stop there. And then
The fifth reason is to remind us of the destruction of the temple and the battle alarms of the foe.
all right. So what do we know now? This is already in the 19th, 20th century. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah and the blowing of the horn, since there is no actual reason given for blowing the ram's horn, as we read from Maimonides right here, without rational basis, that leaves also some options for us to figure out what the ram's horn means to us. Some are what they're obvious that we know today. Number 1, it's Rosh Hashanah. It marks the beginning of the creation of the world. Okay, we knew that. Number 2, it marks the beginning of the 10 days of repentance. We knew that. But now we get to reason number 3, and we're starting to add more reasons for this. Now, the third reason is remind us that we were at Mount Sinai. So this holiday means, what is the next one? The fourth reason is to remind us of the words of the prophets. Okay. Right there. The fifth reason.
Why are they comparing what the prophets said to the ram's horn?
Because now that's the question. That's the excellent question. So now what are they doing? If Rosh Hashanah is the holiday of the blowing of the horn, we can look throughout the text, throughout the Bible, when they also blew horns as well, and compare it. They blew a horn at Mount Sinai. So Rosh Hashanah compares to Mount Sinai. The prophet said there was whoever hears the horn, you need to take warning, take heed. Prepare yourself. There was a horn that was blown during the rebuilding of the second temple. To remind us of the alarm of war at the second temple, or the first temple and its destruction. So when we think of the horn, we're supposed to think of the rebuilding of the temple, which is the Messianic era. So what he's doing is using this idea of the horn blowing to add more reasons for Rosh Hashanah. What's number 6?
You want me to read that?
Please.
Isaac.
The 6th reason is to remind us of the binding of Isaac, who offered himself to heaven. So
now, I'm sorry, we'll stop there now. What do we know about the story of Isaac? We read it during the holidays. Why do we read the story of Isaac? The sacrifice of the son. What happens when Abraham is about to sacrifice his son? The angel comes down and says, don't do it. Instead, I want you to sacrifice the ram. The ram. Where does the shofar come from?
The ram.
Ram's horn. So that's how they connect it to the Akedah.
Well,
Now, the 7th reason.
the 7th reason is that when we hear the blowing of the ram's horn, we fear and tremble and bend our will, to the will of the Creator.
Yeah, finish this one completely, yeah. For such is the, read the whole thing, sorry.
For such is the effect of the ram's horn, which causes shaking and trembling, as it is written, shall the horn be blown in a city, and the people not tremble.
So when we hear the horn, we're supposed to tremble because because of the idea of God. When else do we think about the horn where the city trembled?
Jericho.
One more time.
Jericho,
exactly. The horn is sounded, they surround the city, and you walk around the city and the walls fall down. Number 8.
The 8th reason is to remind us of the great day of judgment, that we may all fear, as it is said, the great day of the Lord is near. It is near and has this greatly, a day of the horn and alarm.
All right, so also as we've talked about the day of judgment, so they go to a prophet and they say this read where it says, the great day of God is near, we're going to blow the horn, and now say, well, that's connected to Rosh Hashanah too. Okay, 9.
The 9th reason is to remind us of the gathering of the dispersed of Israel, that we may passionately long for it, as it is said, and it shall come to pass in that day that a great horn shall be blown, and and they all shall come that were lost in the land of Assyria.
Right. So the horn is also to gather Jews together, because in Isaiah, after the destruction of the northern 10 tribes of the north, he said, one day the horn will be blown and the 10 tribes will gather again. So now in Rosh Hashanah, it's also the day of Jews gathering together in our sanctuary. And number 10.
The 10th reason is to remind us of the revival of the dead, that we may believe in it. And it is said, all ye inhabitants of the world, and you dwellers in the earth, when an ensign is lifted up on the mountains, see you, and when the horn is blown, hear ye.
All right. So also they talk about the end of days, the resurrection of the dead, and the messianic era that is connected with the blowing of the horn. So as you can see, they have a lot of reasons to connect this holiday to other ones by the ram's horn. So
What does the word, I'm sorry, what does the word ensign mean?
I think when
When
An ensign is lifted up on the mountain. I've never seen that word except as a
That,
naval.
could that possibly be that it's
I think it means sign.
that, yeah, some sort of.
Okay, I just don't know.
And I don't let me check those. I think that's what we should double check.
Never heard that word.
Let's see here. A flag is flown.
Oh, okay.
A badge of office or rank. And, yeah. All right.
Sorry.
No, that was a good question, because I just looked at the word sign, so I wasn't paying attention. Perfect. All right, great. So for this holiday, we see that sages know that there's nothing in the Torah that says anything about the holiday beyond don't work. It's first day of the 7th month, and you blow the ram's horn. So they look throughout the Bible. They can look throughout the Bible and see when is the ram's horn blown and for what reason. And we can take that and put it on Rosh Hashanah if we want as well. You know, the ram's horn was blown at the destruction of the city of Jericho. The ram's horn is there for the power of God. The ram is caught in the thicket and sacrificed instead of Isaac. It presents itself as, you know, this Rosh Hashanah is about.
DJ not come home?
I hope DJ made it. So that's how you can use things in the Bible, is you take all of these moments where the ram's horn is blown or where you see a ram, and you add that as to the idea of Rosh Hashanah. So out of all the major holidays, Rosh Hashanah is definitely the one that's probably evolved the most, because the least is given about it when they describe the holidays. That and maybe Shavuos. But even Shavuos, we know, is also a harvest holiday. So we know it's a harvest holiday, although Shavuos, they don't really explain the meaning of it at all. That's completely taken later as well. So that's a little bit about Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, it has become one of the most important holidays. We dip apples in honey, obviously not biblical, but honey obviously comes from Israel because it's known as the land of milk and honey. Apples do not come from Israel. So that tradition is not based on the Torah or the Middle East. So that is a tradition that is, so also coming together for services as a group and making it the major time of year where people come together. This is relatively new as well, because Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have come to be the most important holidays in the Jewish world. Whereas we know 2,000 years ago, that was not the case. 2,000 years ago, Sukkot was the most important holiday. That's the holiday of rain. And Passover was the most important holiday afterwards, because that's the holiday when the rain stops. And if you're living in an agricultural society, harvest holidays are more important. But we are not living in agricultural society. Not only that, we don't live in Israel anymore, so the rainy season is different. So for us, these two holidays have kind of taken on a larger meaning in recent centuries because we're no longer, farmers. So that's a little bit about Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, we celebrate Rosh Hashanah. Some people do it for 2 days. Some people do it for 1 day. It is the only holiday in Israel in which an extra day is celebrated, because generally you celebrate an extra day of a holiday because in Israel they blow the horn, and if you weren't living in Israel, you might start the holiday late. So if I start Sukkot late, I need to have the next day as a holiday so I can get the full holiday just in case I started late. Rosh Hashanah, even in Israel, is celebrated 2 days because it is the first day of the month. And if you're blowing the horn to start the month, you may still start it late. Because so basically you blow the horn to start the month, but if I don't hear it till later, because it's the first day. So some people celebrate 2 days. We do 2 days here. We will have a hybrid holiday system this year. Last year we did 2 of everything. This year we're going to do a hybrid. So first day of Rosh Hashanah, we only have 1 service. Make sure you guys know that. That's Friday night. There's a dinner beforehand for people who want to come. On the second day, there will be 2 services, an early and a late. If you're watching online, we're going to stream the early one. So you can watch it, and then if you start late, once it's over, you can watch it anytime you want. Then we're going to have our family service at 4 o'clock at Lake Meir. And we're going to have our Tashlich at 4:45 at Lake Meir, along with the show. And then at 6 o'clock, if anybody wants to come for the big shofar blowing, it'll be in the Monterey Square on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we have a second day Rosh Hashanah service, and then we'll have lunch right afterwards. And everybody's invited. We do have, passes this year. They don't cost any money. They're just for security. So you can call in to get your passes, and when you get here, just pick them up. So, and then we'll talk about Yom Kippur next week as well. So hopefully this was informational, intriguing, enlightening. Hopefully it was the best 45 minutes of your life. And Ron, sure.
In that passage talking about apples, you said that they didn't grow apples. Did the passage say that they grew apples, or they just had apples?
In that passage, they do.
They do what?
It does say apples. It has become a tradition to eat apples, even though apples don't come from here. They come from,
Yeah, they could have been, sure.
Yeah. But apples have become so popular in a lot of places that it became the fruit of sweetness for obvious reasons. And so we now eat apples with honey because apples are sweet. They weren't that expensive, so everybody could afford them. And obviously you can have it with honey. Traditionally, you'd have honey with probably bread or challah, but these are new traditions. When they say there was an apple that Eve ate in the Garden of Eden, probably was a fruit. It doesn't say apple, it says fruit. So it's just apple became such a popular fruit in Western culture that it became the translation as apple. Because who doesn't like apples?
Rabbi, a point of information. When you come from New York, we call it Yom Kippur.
Yom Kippur, right. So Yom Kippur is Hebrew, Yom Kippur. I grew up with Yom Kippur as well. Yiddish. So
you see why I married her so long ago?
You did a good job.
When I hear that, I think of a kipper, that you.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
All right. All I want you guys to do on this holiday is remember the Kippur.
Everybody have a very meaningful holiday.
You guys too.
You too.
Next week we'll start talk about Yom Kippur. If you have any questions about times, you should have gotten packets, or you can go online. If you have any questions about passages, just give me a call or email me or text me. And we will be having everything, except when we have double services, everything will be online if it's in the sanctuary. The double services, only one will be online, but let's say you miss the first service, you can just watch the recording of the second one. You can watch the recording afterwards, so no big deal. All right, we hope to see you. Understand if not because of things. So Chag Sameach, Shana Tova. So we also say Shabbat Shalom because it's on Sabbath
That's
this year.
right. Yeah.
So that means extra prayers.
Bye now.
All right, we'll see you on Friday.
Okay.
Rabbi.
See you
Yeah.
guys Friday,
Shana Tova.
Saturday, and Sunday. Shana Tova, everybody.